started with some introductions. So, Gabriel, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to share everything we've got planned with you tonight. So, I'm Gabriel Jefferson. I'm the founder of Lobster Capital. Before that, I'm an engineer and an entrepreneur, turned investor in VC. And Lobster Capital is a YC fund investing in the top 2% of YC companies in every batch. We're fortunate to be able to find them early before all of the big VCs get to them and back the best, including Emily here, of course. And excited to be here.
Thank you. Emily?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you, Lobster Capital, for being an investor. I'm Emily D'Amato. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mantle Bio. We build software to help scientists kind of unlock insights from inside large biological data sets. My background is I was a software engineer at multiple biotech companies and did some computational biology research before starting Mantle.
So,
hi everyone, my name is Sol. I am currently a founder of a very young company which started in May of this year called Vertical Bar. We're building software to disrupt ERP industries in manufacturing, supply chain, and healthcare. Before that, I was a founder of UI Flow, which did winter batch of 21 through YC, raised $21 million, and actually last year sold the company to a Workday, which is also in this area. Before that, I was a PM for many different companies, mostly doing analytics software. And it's actually very surprising to see Adeo here because I did Founders Institute back in 2008, and I pitched in a social media aggregator, which I think is one of the 1,000 ideas that everyone wanted to build and didn't go anywhere. Thank you for turning it down. I actually started a better one at the end. I have a software background and really excited to be here and share my experiences.
Thank you, Sol.
Yep.
So as you can see, we have a lot of different perspectives on this panel here today. So we'll get started from the other side with Sol. And Emily, this is a question for both of you as entrepreneurs. So every startup has an inception story, and you have two, Sol, also. Would love to hear what inspired you to start these two companies, or even if you had started some before that I don't know about. You talk about your startups.
Yeah, my very first company was called Tutor Linker, which was actually featured in TechCrunch very early days without me knowing, and melted my $20 per month hosting service after it was actually covered. But I think it's more interesting to actually talk about UI Flow. After that experience, which the Tutor Linker almost got acquired and didn't really quite see the success that I was hoping to see, I tried different things to actually start a new business. And I wanted to actually work at a company that is really growing in tech and joined software companies, small, and then eventually made it up to Silicon Valley companies, moving to San Francisco. And I didn't want to actually start a company unless I had a real problem to solve. And I was searching for that problem for more than 10 years. Because I did not have the conviction to really solving this specific problem would actually impact the world in a meaningful way. And when I actually, before I started UI Flow, I had this idea for UI Flow, which is a collaborative application development platform, for 3 years before I actually started a company. And I really wanted to validate that by joining enterprises, observing how they actually build software together and actually serve their customers through software. And after 3 years of validation, I was actually working at Workday, and then I finally had the conviction to actually start UI Flow. And I think that was a really meaningful moment for me, not only to fulfill my vision and hope to build a software to help the businesses, but also fulfill my own achievement and dream at some point to starting a company and being a founder. And it was a very incredible moment. And I'm doing the same thing in Vertical Bar, not wanting to miss the whole artificial intelligence and the opportunity that lies on it. And I think one of the interesting and exciting area to disrupt was the one that existed for the longest time, and still suffering with the very archaic and mundane tasks and processes. So that's where I'm starting, and I've done about 100 interviews to really validate the problems, and I finally had the conviction in May to really form the company and do something about it. So that's my initial story.
Love that. And I know we've known each other for a few years now, right? You've done the low-code part, you've done the AI part, and I love what you talked about doing those 100 interviews, right? Customer development model, you heard about it from Lean Startup, Increase, or Steve Blank, great insights. So let's move to Emily. Yours is in the biotech space. Would love to hear your journey in inception.
Sure, and I know this audience is not all from the biotech space, so I'll try to give some context. At one point I was doing research in a part of microscopy, and we were using computer vision to try to pick out where protein particles were in microscope images, so this was research at MIT. And I remember at the end of my research, I had all of these command line programs I was using to analyze this data, and in order to keep this record living on for future PhD students that would be in this lab, I took all of the command line I had ever run, I put it in a Google Doc, I printed the Google Doc, 3-hole punched it, and then put it in a binder on the shelf. And now that I've started this company, I have all these conversations with academic researchers in science too, where they'll say things like, I don't know why people use the cloud when a terabyte of data only costs $15 and lasts forever. And I'm realizing that all of these Harvard laboratories are storing all of the data they've ever generated in their lab on hard drives in closets. I hear countless tales of how they won't turn on again. I know many labs version their code by writing R scripts on laptops that they email to themselves. And most scientists have never worked with a database, and so they're storing all of their information in CSVs in Dropbox. And so it's really, as a software engineer, sad to see that the people that are trying to cure cancer and stop global warming don't have the tools that everyone working at FANG companies have access to every day. And so I always had this feeling that there needed to be better software and infrastructure in the science space, but for a long time nobody would hire me as a software engineer. And I got my first break when a company called Rail, which is a diagnostic company in the South Bay, decided to kind of for the first time hire a software team and let them build infrastructure in-house. We built bioinformatics tools that could store over 35 petabytes of genomics data, and we were running 280,000 pipeline runs per year. And so this was pretty amazing, and that's also where I met my now co-founder. And the two of us went from there to another biotech company where they once again had too much data, they didn't know what to do with it, and we built something similar. And at this point we started to think, well, if these two companies need this, maybe there will be more science companies that also need tools like this. We're starting to ask that question around 2020 when many things started to change very quickly. First, COVID really accelerated the biotech industry. We're seeing, I think everybody had a chance to see how badly we need bio to move fast. The second big thing that happened was ChatGPT came online, and suddenly everybody just started to think, hey, if I have all this biological data, maybe we can use this machine learning thing and combine those and come up with something. And then the third that is, I think, less widely known is that the cost to do DNA sequencing actually plummeted dramatically in the last 3 years. And now it is very, very cheap for companies to generate massive amounts of data that they were never able to before. And so my now co-founder and I, we're at this moment where almost every biotech company starting now really, really needs these tools in order to be able to leverage all of these changes in the system. And so a year and a half ago, we started Mantle Bio. We started partnering with companies in our network almost immediately. 2 months ago, we were excited that we launched a community version of our product so that we can provide it for free to academic researchers and early stage companies. And yeah, we're right down the street in still growing.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Now, let's give them a big round of applause. YC entrepreneurs. So let's talk about Lobster Capital. Right? Basically, you decided to start this fund focused on YC companies. Tell us about yourself, right? I'd love for the audience to know more about Lobster Capital and why you started it.
Sure. So my journey started with entrepreneurship first. before investing, and started with the wrong idea of building 2, 3, 4 companies at the same time, which is a recipe for disaster. Very young and very too ambitious, I guess. But the flip side of that was touching on a lot of different industries, a lot of different startups, and so learning how not all startups are actually created equal. You have some startups that probably are going to do better just from the type of business that you're into, and some others are going to struggle. I'll give you a very simple example. My very first business was shipping wine to people's doors, to people's homes, which is very cliche for a French, I agree. But the wine is super heavy, very expensive to ship, it actually breaks, so that's just a terrible business, however you want to look at it. If you're shipping software, it doesn't cost anything bad. And so after 7 startups and 4 very hardcore failures, hardcore for me, and 3 small exits, I took, so that's 10 years, I took a little bit of that money and started angel investing. And I started angel investing in France, where I'm from. And very quickly realized, well, wait a minute, that's not the right place to angel invest. You want to angel invest in Silicon Valley. This is where the best startups are. And so this is what first led me to investing, discovering that all startups are not created equal and all of those different experiences that I had, and then just looking for better deal flow. Just woke up one morning and said to myself, better deal flow is somewhere else. It's in Silicon Valley, it's not in Europe. And then if you go one step further, I was here and I said to myself, okay, now where's better deal flow? And obviously, the answer is Y Combinator. At least that's the answer that I came up with. The numbers speak for themselves. I think now it's around 6% unicorn rate. So that means if you randomly pick 20 companies in YC, one of them becomes a unicorn. That's pretty insane. It's the only place on earth that you have that number. Have crazy other stats, like I think it's 40% that raises Series A, etc., etc. And so now the question becomes, okay, how do you invest in Y Combinator? Because everybody knows of Y Combinator startups, but they're not always that easy to invest into, especially the ones that everybody wants to get in, the fast-moving rounds, that get oversubscribed, etc. And so that's been my journey for the last 5 years, just trying to do good on the YC ecosystem and meet the right people and get as good as possible reputation with YC founders so they'll introduce you to the next big thing. And after doing this for a while and actually it working it out and me getting really good access to the YC ecosystem, decided to start Lobster. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting when we first met. Actually, we actually met a few months ago, and then we ended up talking about this event. And guess where we came up with this event idea? When we were both with our families on vacation in Bali, right? Here we are meeting in Bali just to chat with families, and then we said, okay, let's do this event, right? So all the great ideas come from unique places while you're relaxing, absolutely. So Emily, let's talk about some advice for entrepreneurs here. There are several health tech entrepreneurs here. A show of hands, like how many of you? Okay, I can see 3, 4, 5, yeah, about 6. Yeah, we have quite a few in that. So tell us, what are some learning lessons that have shaped your company as you go from your 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, whatever journey that you're going, especially early stage?
Yeah, I think one thing, maybe it was because we came from Y Combinator, we do not look like the typical Y Combinator company, right? To stereotype a little bit, it's 2 undergrad dropouts building a social media or DevOps tool that's going to viral growth. And so a lot of the sales advice we get would be crazy things, dance around and hand out flyers or cold message every single person you're connected to on LinkedIn. And I don't know if you've talked to academic researchers, but if we were to cold message them randomly, they would probably immediately block us, tell other friends they hate us, and you have to know your industry. Same thing if you're building in health tech. You're not going to just start handing out flyers to doctors. That's probably not how you want to go about it. And so you really need to know how to have a lot of empathy for who you build for and spend a lot of time with them and really understand them as people and what they're interested in. And I would say something I love about doing sales and marketing in this space is that we work with a lot of researchers, and researchers in general love learning. That's usually why they're doing it, and it means that a lot of our marketing material is actually educational material. And I know I'm having a really great conversation with someone about Mantle. The calls sometimes go like full 2 hours over because we'll just be talking about their research. But that's not sales advice I'm ever going to get from a DevOps tool company that's been through something similar. So I think if you're in these spaces, you kind of have to innovate on how you do your go-to-market strategy and learn for yourself.
Yeah, great input. So you want to add to that?
Well, I come from a slightly different field, and mine is traditional B2B SaaS. We target enterprises to build software applications in a much more efficient and collaborative way. So I think there are just less of an advice and more of a kind of takeaways from my experiences that your landing page really matters. And when we were about to launch, we had a very similar copied version from Linear's landing page. I think a lot of startups actually do that. They actually count the numbers of how many companies are actually copying their landing pages. And we launched it on Product Hunt. And it was like a couple hours later, I got an email from Linear's founder saying, don't do this, don't copy us. So the landing page, I think the content is very important, but also how you actually convey the message through visuals, through messaging, and through how you want to be remembered by thousands of SaaS companies that are out there. Our batch, in 21 was completely remote batch. I think it was one of the largest cohort in terms of numbers. I think we had over 200 companies, and I think the one after was larger, but still very large companies, and everyone wanted to stand out. And it was really hard for a startup to really stand out, even though we went through YC. Not many people, especially the business decision makers in the SaaS and large enterprises, actually know about YC either. I mean, they may have heard the name, but they don't really give credits to, okay, you're YC, so what? So really focusing on and zeroing in the problem that they are having and have an emotional connection to that problem. And before you even present the solution is really important. You have to empathize with the problems that they're having and then present the solutions, not trying to push the solutions into their, force them to actually take it, because it's not working. So I think it's really important to find the problems that is really worth solving, even though after you have a company and you have a product, you may have to pivot multiple times to actually find that problem that it's worth solving. Don't try to reverse engineer that you have a solution that you're trying to looking for a problem that they want to solve. That's a 100% guarantee that it's not going to work. You may have one very, very, very lucky company who actually happen to be successful, but you don't want to take that chance. There's many more places that you want to take a calculated risk of how you want to really solve a right problem instead of trying to look for a solution from your science experiments or software that you created over summertime. So that was a very hard takeaways, because we did the same thing. We had a solution and we were looking for problems for many months before we actually. It was very painful. So if you are in my shoes back then in 21, I recommend you really trying to seek the right problem to solve before you really fantasize about your solution being adopted by your customers.
Wonderful. Any entrepreneurs in the B2B side? Few folks, okay? All right.
I want to add that it just goes back to YC's advice that they repeat over and over: talk to your customers, make something people want. So that's the two answers that we've heard.
Okay. So, Gabriel, tell us what you look for in entrepreneurs you invest. What qualities? What is the secret sauce?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate that all of the entrepreneurs that I do invest in have been selected by YC. So there's already a threshold to, YC accepts, I believe, less than 1% of applicants. So it's harder to get into YC than to get into Harvard now. So that's one thing that I got going. They do all the work for me. But the number one thing I'm indexing on is early traction. When I said earlier I invest in the top 2% of every batch, it's the ones that have the most traction early on. Just because startups is all about execution. And if you do have early traction, one way or another, you can achieve that. You've executed, you've built, and you've sold, and probably you have some sort of product market fit. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that traction. So that's got to be the first one, and what I'm really over-indexing on. I would, of course, want founders to have grit, because it is tough building a startup, and probably I'm not, teaching you anything new. You know that, but working with even the very best shiny YC startups that are growing very quickly, and they really are struggling, and there are some tough moments, and it's never easy. And I guess the last thing I want to add is I'm really looking for startups having what I call it's not from me, but I call it a maniacal sense of urgency. You gotta ship like yesterday. And I see many funds and investors doing this, and I believe it's a mistake, where a company is growing, but it takes them 6 years. And when you're a fund, you have a duty to return money to your investors as quickly as possible. So, a unicorn in 10 years is great, but a unicorn in 150 years is not that great because everybody's dead. You're not there to return money. So you gotta have some sort of sense of urgency. Again, I'm very lucky that YC actually does a lot of the work for me and imprints this in all the YC founders. But you immediately see the people who are moving faster than others, and that's something that I really, really like, because you iterate faster, you build faster, you ship faster, and so you grow faster.
Nice, love it. Actually, I can see a lot of similarities. When I was asked the same question, because I'm an angel investor myself, I say that I look at 4 T's: TAM, team, technology, and traction. So very much aligned with the way you're thinking. Right? As a marketer, I always coin it as like 3 C's, 4 P's, 4 T's. So
you did a better job than me, for sure.
Thank you, Gabriel. Awesome. So let's actually turn to YC itself, right? I'd love to hear from you, Sol, to start with, and then also Emily. Tell us your experience getting into YC. How was it? Was it obviously it's 1%, so it's obviously a little difficult for most people to get in. Tell us, how did you get in? And then, because many people here might be interested in that, and then once you got in, what was the impact that YC had on your startup, and what are some takeaways?
I don't have a very much of an interesting story how I got to YC. I think the best advice that I have given to other people when I'm asked the same question is that just do what they ask you to do. It's actually very simple. So answer the questions that they ask you to answer. I don't know how many people, I review a lot of the applications, people want me to review and provide some feedback. Almost every application that I read doesn't answer at least half the questions directly. I think I can't stress enough, if they're asking for numbers, answer with number. If they're asking for yes or no, answer with yes or no. And then, provide the additional commentary. That's fine. But be concise and answer the question is my best advice for YC applications. In terms of YC experience, I think the best takeaway, it's not a knowledge. Yes, they have their internal wikis and it's constantly updating. It's very helpful. But you don't actually learn anything new outside of the startup school materials that is already published and available. So it's not for the education aspect of it. I think it's the atmosphere and the autonomy they're given, the environment they actually give you, that in 3 months, try everything that you've got to make your successful startup lift off. That's the best environment that YC is successful at creating, and it gives you the almost illusion of, okay, I can go out there and talk to anyone. As you can tell, I'm not very outgoing and an extrovert person, but during those 3 months, you are either in pressure to do that, or you are empowered to actually talk to strangers and talk about your service and product that you're building. Through online, when you're going network, same thing. So that 3-month period that you are tasked to basically start from zero and have a slight lift off, that's the demo day that you're selling. So when you have that small delta from the ground to that end of the 3 month, that's what you're selling. And YC basically creates you with the psychological safety that you can fail and fail and fail as long as you create that delta at the end of the 90 days. So I think that's the best experience that I have. And I'm with this new company, I'm trying to create that same thing. But it's always hard when you're actually doing it by yourself. It's easier when other people and partners, like Michael Seibel, telling you, okay, you need to get out there and talk to your customers. Stop fooling around trying to sell your software to cohorts and then your batchmates. Don't do that. You're an enterprise company. Go talk to enterprise decision makers. That was kicking the butt that I had when I was in second month, end of the second month. I had 1 month to actually create that delta and eventually raise the seed round.
Nice. Great. How was your experience?
Also, well, for us, really fantastic. I'll start with getting into YC. I think there's a lot of different routes to getting in. Meeting other companies in the batch, some of them were having this incredible early traction. They dropped out of college and had something that just really blew up. We were in this other camp. We had this idea. We had not written a single line of code. And so I think when you're applying to YC, yes, answer the questions, fill out the form, but quite a lot of what you show up to the interview with is just who you are and what you know and what you plan to do. And so a lot of us getting into YC was not about the application, the interview, in that moment. It was everything. My co-founder and I had worked 2 jobs together. We've been working together for 5 years. We had been in the industry we planned to work for. We'd been building internal tools side by side with the kind of people that we wanted to sell this product to. And so that was really what carried our application. I actually wrote my application as a solo founder. And so the most important thing that got us accepted was that I happened to be getting a drink at a bar with my now co-founder the night before the interview and somehow convinced her to show up the next day. And I don't think we would have been accepted if she hadn't decided to kind of take that jump right. It's really the night before. And there's no one else I could be really building this with. We'd been building together for 5 years, and the number one reason companies fail is co-founder breakup. And so I think the team is one of the most important features, and I think that was really compelling to YC to see that we had a team that had really proven that we could work together. How YC was, we were both back-end software engineers, and so I think YC complemented us really well in that we knew our users, we knew how to build it, we had never built a business. And so YC helped us. Within those 3 months, we closed our first enterprise deal. We closed the seed round that gave us years of runway. And I don't think we could have done that in that time frame without YC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great inputs, actually. Really nice summaries there in terms of how you actually get that push to move forward, being part of YC and finding the right entrepreneur as a co-founder. Really good insights there. Another thing I heard, I got a chance to hear Gary Tan speak, and he was talking about that when he was telling, he looked at 500 applications, and the ones he rejected are the ones that said, oh, somebody else is doing this and so I want to do the same, right? We want to see that passion, the unique way, perspective that you bring. So that was another interesting insight. So let's talk about investors and helping the entrepreneurs succeed, Gabriel. So we'd love to hear, how do you help your entrepreneurs succeed? If you have any example or story to share, it would be great.
Sure. We'd love to talk about that. It's actually, I believe, essential. YC is a closed, tight-knit community. I've talked already about getting into some arguably hot deals, quote unquote. And so you don't get into those deals. Usually they get offered 2 to 5 times as much money as they need to raise. You probably remember that. And so they're choosing who they want. They're picking the best investors. And so now it comes to the value add. And apparently everybody tells you their value add. So who is and who isn't? And so for me, it really comes down to my experience as a founder. I believe even at big funds, not to say bad things about big funds, but even at big funds, you have sometimes some people who've never built a single business. And so that's where I come in and say, hey, I've been in your shoes, I've done it several times in different industries, and I know what you're going through and I can help. So that's really the main thing. And again, because I've touched on a lot of different things, there's almost always something that I can help them with. And usually founders tell me that even if I don't tell them, I can tell you've built a business before because of the way you're asking the questions, and how do you attract your customers? Okay, but this is probably not working, etc. So, and I'll give a very simple example. I invested in one of my first YC company, actually, so that helped me earn my reputation at YC. The founder came to me and said, hey, we're struggling with B2B sales. And I tell her, hey, have you tried webinars? It's scalable, you do one webinar, but actually a lot of people can attend. So you sell once, but many people buy. No, I haven't tried webinars. Okay, let's take 2 hours and I'll teach you how to do it. One of my businesses, obviously, I ran webinars and learn how to do it. So I just teach it to her. First half, you just provide value. Second half, limited time offer that expires, at midnight or tomorrow or something, so that people can act quickly on the webinar. And try it and do it yourself, do it live, etc. Just walk her through the whole thing. And that's it. I don't hear about her for another year. And a year later, she raises a massive round from Sequoia. So I called to congratulate her. Like, oh, that's awesome. Congrats. And she says to me, well, we're growing extremely fast, but actually 90% of our new customers come from webinars. I say, well, please make sure you tell everyone at YC. So that's one example. But just try to help with what I've done and seen in the past.
Yeah, that's great. I think, helping the entrepreneur with what exactly the problem they're trying to solve, being there for them, right? Giving good capital than just invest and forget, right? So that's a very good input.
And if you invest and forget, you're not going to last long at YC. So.
Exactly. That makes sense. Let's now take another turn because we have some interesting perspective with Soul, who actually sold the company to Workday, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Tell us your journey. How did you package your company for sale? How did you make that happen? So many entrepreneurs want to make that happen.
Yeah, so there are a couple sort of pivotal milestones to kind of the timeline to think about. So before you sign an offer, after you sign an offer, and before you close, and after you close, what happens? So, it's a common sense to not look for a acquirer first, because it's a massive loss of confidence in your business that you have to find a home proactively by talking to other potential acquirers. So, even though you think that's a viable path given your situation currently, I think there's a lot of psychological thinking as a founder and CEO to train yourself that you're not looking for an exit. And this is easier said than done. You have to actually think about, find ways to basically not go through an acquisition before you actually sign the offer. Even though you're talking, you're being skeptical about how can I walk away from this deal. So never look desperate. It's a psychological thing that you have to basically train yourself to think that the person on the other table needs this company more than I need them. The reality may not be the reflection of how you actually think about it, but as a founder and CEO, you have to actually put in a mindset that they need us more than we need them. After you sign the deal, you have to basically think about three things, and this is the advice that I got from YC Partner. First and foremost, your team. You have to, many of the acquisitions come with a contingency that some of the key members of the technical staff have to join and be observed by the company we're purchasing. So you have, not only for that reason, but you have to be transparent and you have to be very humane about your team members who went through a lot of the pains and suffering altogether. So you do have to communicate in some key people that you are thinking about acquisition, and you maybe after you sign the deal, you have to actually disclose that, because as soon as they leave, maybe the deal is off the table, and you already signed the paperwork that blocks you from actually finding another acquirer for anywhere between 12 months to 24 months, depending on the situation. So those are the kind of the mindset that, before you sign the offer letter and after you sign the offer letter, your focus is the smooth transition and the team and the investor. So the order that I actually talked about as a priority was team, investor, and myself. Myself comes in third for many reasons, but you have to actually think in that order, because when the team actually falls apart, the deal's off the table. Same thing with investors. You have to actually bring the key investors all together, because they have to be okay with this acquisition. And then, quit yourself. But try to have the mindset that you are now shifting from, they need us more than we need them mentality to, I'm here for a smoothest transition possible. So you are basically switching from a negotiator to an operator. So your mindset is, how do I actually make sure that our financial is as clean as possible? What are the clauses? What are the IP requirements? All those things. You're basically like focusing on when you wake up all the way to when you go to bed, how can I make this as seamless as possible? That's very exhausting and painful. And I did that for 6 months. And I lost sleep, lost my hair, and all that. I held my wife's hands, and we cried over bed, because there was just a lot of emotional things that is going on. Because it's your baby, and it was your baby for 3 months. I have two daughters. I cannot imagine, handing my kids to somebody else's. It's not as same as doing that, but emotionally it's very similar, because it was born from your head, and you scaled it and you launched it, and you're actually giving it to somebody else. So my recommendation is not try to do that and just focus on the operation side of things. Once it's signed, then you are transitioning from operator to a smooth phase-out person. It's different depending on the acquisition, but when you're actually staying on board, you want to stay close to your team. But in my case, I wanted to actually not stay. And we negotiated very heavily from 2 years to 6 months, and at the end, 5 months. So I was actually out the door after 5 months of the close. And my goal was to leave my employees and team members at the good hands, and myself, actually phasing out. So those are some of the kind of mindset shift that I had to go through, and I'm happy to talk more about any of the aspects. The last tip that I will leave with is that when you're negotiating, don't be fooled by what they're actually putting as a guardrail of you can move numbers and things like that. What I learned is that anything can be on the table for negotiation. So even though they're not talking about it, you can ask for it, and there's no set rule and template about acquisition of a company, because every company is so different. That's why there's no company, no startup actually solving a dissolving a company and actually being absorbed by a new company, because it's so different case by case. And it's maybe somebody will actually eventually solve that problem, but it is very hard to actually do that. So that's what I learned.
Great. I think we can even do a full workshop on this topic, right? There's so much learning lessons. Thank you. So Emily, I'm going to ask you a question about leadership, right? Tell us some of your guiding principles, habits, thought processes that have been valuable to be successful leader in a company.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's easy to be a good leader when you have a good team. I'll say that. I think one piece of advice that we were given early on by a few people that I didn't take from any of them was I had this feeling that we were building for this really interdisciplinary space. I think everyone has a little bit of bias that you should check, that you should hire people like yourself, and I consider myself really multidisciplinary, and that I love biology and software. And we were advised not to try to find those people. Instead, they said, go find the best biologist you can and go find the best software engineer you can. We didn't do that, and I think it's been very powerful for the company. And we have this really one-of-a-kind team where right now, every single person in the company has both been in science and can write code. And I think what that's done is, what's really incredible, the small size we're at, is that everybody speaks the same language. Like, every person in the company can say what they're working on, and every person in the company can understand it. And I know that won't last forever, but it's what's letting us move incredibly fast at our current size. And so I think that's one piece too. It's made leadership easier in that I can be also really transparent about all the conversations I have with customers and users. I can say what their pain points are, and they can be understood. And so it's let everybody have a really high level of empathy. I think being really in touch with why your team is there. Like, I know every member, I think I can say like why every single member of our team is at our company and know what they're hoping to get out of this experience. I think a lot of people join early stage startups because they hope someday to have their own early stage startup. And I actually think that's a really great situation for early hires because they're taking an incredible risk and all they're asking for is to learn. And those are some of the best people to work with because they're going to soak up every resource you can give them and hopefully get that chance to execute on it. Yeah. So making sure you're really aligned, like all your incentives are aligned with the people you work with.
Sounds good. Well, I know audience must be dying to ask questions. Maybe we can take some questions from the audience before we proceed further. There's a mic over there. Anybody can raise their hands if you have questions.
First one is always the hardest. Super brave.
You can make sure it's turned on.
Hi. Hi, my name is Sandy. My question is pretty easy since it's the first question. Why is it called lobster capital besides the fact that it's delicious? Salmon, I got it. Yeah, but why?
Someone this afternoon said, make sure you mention why it's so thank you. I forgot that you saved me.
I was actually the plant. I'm just kidding.
I'll give you the $20 after. I learned just before starting this fund that lobsters grow forever. They never stop growing. They're not immortal, they have predators and they die, but they actually grow forever. So in science. And so that's what I want my startups to do, to grow forever. So this is lobster capital. And also, yes, this beautiful sweater.
Actually, there's another part to that, if you don't mind me adding. Sure. So lobsters, they have to get rid of their outer shell in order to grow. So they go behind like a rock or something. It's almost like getting out of your comfort zone. Right? Unless you actually break out of your shell, you actually don't grow. You know, it's true, right? So that's something to learn about, and I really appreciate it.
I'm stealing this.
You can steal
100%. Thank you.
Write that down, Gabrielle. Write it down.
Oh, it's okay. It's engraved in my memory forever now.
Next question. I have a few more. If nobody has questions, I'll continue asking. Yes, Rob.
There's a fetish of getting into Y Combinator, just like there is getting into the Ivy League universities. A high percentage of Y Combinator graduates fail within a few years. Most Fortune 500 CEOs did not go to an Ivy League university, so is this just a lot of hype? This elitism?
Should I
Who
take
wants
that?
to take it?
Yeah, I can take that. The question is a good one. No one is saying, and no one has ever said that going through YC is a sure thing, like you're going to succeed no matter what. There is failure in YC. And people at YC are not saying, if you don't go through YC, you're nobody and you don't exist and you don't matter. People at YC are very happy to be at YC, but there's a world outside of YC. I personally chose YC because of the odds. I'm an engineer, remember, and so even if there are some failures at YC, if you have a 6% unicorn rate that you don't find anywhere else, your odds are actually better. Not to say that every company is going to succeed. And so if your odds are better, the outcome of your fund should be better. And so it's reducing the risk, not eliminating it. And the fund will have companies go to zero. That's part of the model, and you can still perform really, really well. Hope that answers the question.
Well, I want to say thank you, Preeti, for bringing a wonderful group together here tonight. You know, the best VCs, 15% of the time, they're supposed to be doing 20 to 100x. And if you're only investing in the top couple percent, the Y Combinator, a lot of them have a super inflated market cap. So how do you have the conversation with your LPs that you're going to be able to get enough juice from the squeeze per each batch? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a question I get asked all the time. You know, people sort of dump on YC for valuations being too high, and they're right 90% of the time. But again, so if you're investing in a company that has, 2 slides and 2 founders and they started last week and it's a 20 million seed, it's probably too expensive, at least in my opinion. But again, remember, I'm looking for those companies that actually have demonstrated very strong and early traction. And so you're usually paying sort of the same price for hundreds of thousands, if not millions in revenue, and all of a sudden it's actually not that expensive of a price. The last company I invested in, last Friday, 3 days ago, 30 million seed. Oh my God, so expensive. But actually they're doing 2 million in ARR. They started less than a year ago. You're growing 25% month over month. So you're paying 15 times revenue of today with a 25% growth per month. That's a better deal than any other, And so I see also a lot of VCs who don't want to touch YC and they invest in a company just because it's cheap. Oh my God, it's a 4 million seed. It's amazing. Well, yes, but it's never going to go anywhere. So you get for cheap, you got a bunch of nothing. And I got this from real estate. I started investing in real estate in France, 15 years ago. And people told me, don't invest in Paris, it's too expensive. Invest in those small cities that are very cheap. And I didn't listen to them. I invested in Paris, and guess what? You know where this is going. Price in Paris, it's the same here. Just went up significantly, and the price in those small cities that no one remembers stayed down. So it's the same thing. Sometimes it's smart buying the expensive stuff.
It's almost like having 100 shares in Google rather than 100,000 shares.
Exactly. That's why people don't buy one Bitcoin, but a small whatever, and it's actually better to have 0. Whatever Bitcoin. So yeah.
All right. You have a question? Oh yeah, that's right. So one last question before we go to the fireside chat. We have a timekeeper. Yes. Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
My name is Pedro from Brazil.
On the mic.
I need the mic.
Oh, okay.
Do you mind he go first, then you, Linway?
No problem. You can go first.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
My name is Linway, and I know everybody here is probably for the secret of success here, but what I'm curious is, what was the most recent mistake or failures you've made? I mean, no, I don't make mistakes is also an acceptable answer, but I'm just curious.
Do you want to talk?
Yeah, well, I like that you mentioned grit as something that you look for in founders. Actually, Y Combinator at one point told us all you have to do is not die for long enough and then you succeed. They also use other very pessimistic language and imagery, like all you have to do is be a cockroach and be unkillable. And I actually found that really reassuring because I had never started a successful company before, but I felt like I was unkillable. I feel like there are many, many times that I've been stomped on and I cannot be killed. And so I found that really reassuring. Mistakes I've made, I don't know, I'm going for a cheap shot, which is that for our first customer, we built on-premise integration. We shut it down like 6 months ago. Now we're fully in the cloud. We'll never build on-prem again. But I think knowing when you built a feature, even if you've invested a lot of time and resources into it, and then being willing to walk away is really important.
Maybe I have one to share in terms of mistakes. So I don't know how many of you are immigrants or families of immigrants, and I am. I came here when I was in middle school. And when I started UiFlow, I had this false idea of I have to become the ideal Silicon Valley founder. And I think that haunted me for at least like the first 2 years, that I was not myself when I actually ran the company, when I was pitching, when I was talking to customers. I had this idea of Elon Musk and all these figures that I have to do the same thing as they do. And I have to do the Zoom founders. That was the closest Asian founder that I could model who are successful during the COVID time. So I think people are, because of lack of self-validation and confidence, you try to look for answers externally. But I think the real answer of who you are and what kind of company that you want to actually run is in yourself. So my recommendation, and that was a very hard mistake to actually recover from. My advice and my mistake was that I was not myself 100%. And this company that I'm starting now, I'm intentionally starting and doing things very different because that was not who I am. So I wanted to be 100% myself. I wanted to protect myself to be 100% while I'm actually building a viable business and successful business. And that I think, I could still be wrong and fail, but at least I can enjoy this process 1,000 times more than I have. That was exciting, raising a lot of money from a lot of the known SaaS founders, going through YC. But at the end of the day, I think you have to be yourself to actually find the answer, what kind of company that you wanted to build and what kind of problem that you wanted to solve. And at the end, what kind of impact do you want to make in this world and make it better?
Nice, wonderful. Last question, and then we have to shoot.
A very beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question for Gabriel regarding some advices that I received this month. I'm from Brazil. We are from college, Brazil. And we received advice like you have to be a world-class founder to receive investments and to raise money. But the real thing that I want to know about raising money is about competitive advantage. We were talking about AI a lot this last month, and everybody was saying like most people are trying to look for problems that they can embed AI on it and to just try to solve everything with AI, like AI washing. So I'm really keen on knowing what's real competitive advantage looking in this whole ocean of startups being born, and yes, what is real competitive advantage when you're looking for something to invest in?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question because you should have a competitive advantage. One day, if you're successful, you're going to get copied, and so you want to have that answer of, if I have 10 other people start the same thing, how do I win? There's a lot of answers to that, and they come in all shapes and forms. The obvious thing used, outside of software, and so that doesn't help you, but outside of software used to be you patent your product, you patent your invention, and so you're protected. But you can't patent code and software, so what you do. And again, there's thousands of different answers, but you got to find something that's impossible to replicate. So, it could be yourselves as founders, either your network or knowledge or experience. If you've been through some very specific set of companies that allow you to understand a problem better than anyone else, you could be your own unfair advantage is yourself and your team. Could be a network. Anybody can code Twitter or Instagram in an afternoon, but you don't have 2 billion users. So the value is not in the software, it's in the network. Could be your customer acquisition hacks and techniques. If you're ranking number 1 on Google on your keyword and you just get customers while you sleep, people can try and copy your software, but you're going to be the one winning. So you've got to find something. The list goes on and on and on. You've got to find something that makes you unique and that gets excited by investors. I want to add, because you said you're talking to, trying to find investors, going back to what Saul said about acquisition, you're not actually selling. So not needing investors is actually one of the best way to raise. You raise when you don't need to, but you should probably still raise, but also have, exactly like Saul said again, a contingency plan, like, hey, if we don't raise, that's okay, we just keep going. And we don't need that money. That money is just to go faster. but we don't need that money. And I know coming from an investor, it's probably weird, but it's the truth. Make a contingency plan that you need the money. The best money is money from the customers, not money from the investors.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.